Well, who do you have for a judge?
We have Judge Toro.
Oh.
So he's a good judge, and
Very smart.
We expect some hearing on the case by the spring in the trial court.
And then the Attorney General, Martha Coakley, filed a suit as well. I mean,
Right.
how does that, on the same issue as I understand it, how does that
Well, they're separate lawsuits and they're separate legal theories. The Attorney General's theory is really that the federal government is forcing Massachusetts to discriminate in certain benefits programs where there are state and federal joint programs like Medicaid.
Interesting.
And that the federal government has no right to intrude on state affairs in that way. So they're separate cases, but we would expect, it hasn't been determined yet, that Judge Toro, who also has the Attorney General's case, will hear those cases at the same time.
Well, yeah, and I imagine another federal spousal benefit, which is close, near and dear to my heart, is the immigration issue.
That's right.
If you're heterosexual, you marry somebody, they're a U.S. citizen.
Right. And it's really one of the most wrenching kinds of calls that we get at Kline. We hear from thousands of people each year, and we get a lot of calls from same-sex couples where one partner is not a U.S. citizen, and those relationships can sometimes be torn apart, and people have to go leave the country because of the discrimination of the federal government. It's unfair, and it requires not only a litigation response, but also a response from Congress to repeal this law and provide equality for people, which is one of the most basic principles of civil rights that we have in this country.
It just seems to me that you treat similarly situated people the same.
That's right.
You know, it just makes no sense what they're doing.
And that is what the Constitution requires.
So you've been listening to Legal Lines. I am Tim Lynch, your host. Our phone number here is 617-708-3290. I encourage you to call in should you have any questions. Again, our phone number here is 617-708-3290. What about transgender? There's been a number of issues there this past year, and I imagine coming up as well.
We are working on all kinds of issues related to equal treatment under the law for people who are transgender. There are just a whole array of issues. One of the areas that comes up frequently is access to health care. People might be surprised to know that Medicaid actually refuses to provide any health care to treat gender identity disorder, which is an established medical condition. There's no dispute in the field of medicine that it's a legitimate medical condition where people's sense of who they are, their internal sense of their gender, is not the same as the sex they were born. And this causes tremendous distress and suffering, and it's something that all medical professionals agree should be treated by a whole range of therapies such as hormone therapy or sex reassignment surgery, but the federal government, or the state government, refuses to cover that. And we're looking for a case in that area, but we are waiting for a decision in a case that we think will be helpful in establishing access to health care.
So your tax case.
Which is a case that was actually tried a long time ago, where the Internal Revenue Service denied a tax deduction for costs related to sex reassignment surgery. So if your medical costs are a certain percentage of your income, you can take them as a tax deduction. And the federal government has a very loose standard. They really allow anything that's possibly related to health care to be deducted, regardless of whether there's a consensus in medicine that it's the right treatment. Here, there's really a consensus among the experts and in the medical profession that sex reassignment surgery and hormone therapy are established medical therapies for treating gender identity disorder and transsexualism. The federal government has denied that tax deduction, claiming it's merely cosmetic. So they're equating sex reassignment surgery with a nose job.
Yeah.
And it really makes no sense at all. So we're waiting for that decision, which we hope will, again, help establish the legitimacy of the medical needs of transgender people. We're also litigating a case, our Transgender Rights Project Director Jennifer Levi is litigating a case on behalf of a prisoner who was denied any treatment for gender identity disorder. And the strange thing was that the prison authorities agreed that she had gender identity disorder and needed this treatment, and in fact had engaged in self-mutilation because she was not given appropriate treatment. But they denied the treatment because they have a policy that says you can't get hormone therapy in prison if you weren't receiving it before you were in prison. Now that makes no sense. That's like saying you can't get kidney dialysis in prison if you weren't getting it before you entered prison, when in fact you need kidney dialysis. So we're again challenging that case. It's going to be an important case. There's also a very important legislative issue related to passing a non-discrimination law for transgender people.
Yeah, and hopefully that will come up this year, 2010.
We hope so. The legislative session goes through July, end of July 2010. It's an important bill to just establish basic protections that if you're transgender, you shouldn't be fired from a job, denied housing, denied access to public accommodations, the same basic protections that we have for people who've been historically discriminated against on other bases. And it really is a shame that Massachusetts has not passed that bill yet.
It is a shame, and Massachusetts is behind the times. Hopefully,
Absolutely.
2010 they'll catch up. Well, thank you, Ben. Thank you for
My
joining
pleasure.
us. If you'd like to learn more about GLAAD, and I encourage you to do so, please go to www.glad.org. That's glad.org. They have a wonderful web page. You can learn more about all the good work they're doing. If you want to help out, contribute, please go there and find out how you can do that. I know that they've done, as I said at the beginning, historical work here to the benefit of all of us in our community. Thank you for tuning in on MLGBA Legal Lines. Legal Lines appears to you live every third Wednesday at 4 o'clock of every month. Our next program will be, I believe, Wednesday, January 20th. At that time, we will have Lisa Coutier of Burns and Levinson to discuss estate planning issues for same-sex couples, which is always an important issue, particularly because it's so different from heterosexual couples. Thank you again. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Appreciate it. Good. So when is that legislation?